should get started.
Okay.
All right, everyone, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So welcome to the Cyber Studio Collab. Just some quick announcements. So the Cyber AI Symposium is happening very soon. So just next week on Tuesday, 6 p.m. at the Hmong Learning Center. Pull up, there's free food. And then also, we've recently opened up the membership requirement submission form. So if you want to be counted as an active member for Cyber, just fill out this form. If you've done Academy or Lab or PBR, any one of those, you can go ahead and use that to fulfill the requirements. And then also our CSURF interest form is out. So if you're interested in doing a project with us over the summer and maybe like trying to submit a paper for an undergraduate conference or something like that, please fill this out. And we'll close the form like in 1 week. So, just it's not very long. Just do it quickly and then you don't need to worry about it. And yeah, with that, I'm going to hand it off to Leah for her talk on video game security. So let's give it up.
Hi, I'm Leah. If you don't know me, I'm from Cyber and I'm an officer, and I will be presenting with Studio Officer Sean. Woohoo, go Sean. And we are going to be talking about video game security. So what is video game hacking? So obviously definition is modifying a game to change its behavior. So changing your health, your speed, having an aimbot, pretty much anything that gives you an advantage or, helps you experiment with the game, cheating. It's used for all different types of things. And it is a big problem. But first, before we get into like all the different kind of like more logistical sides of game hacking, I'm going to go a bit into like the technical details and some of the technical things that people do that is considered game hacking. So obviously, one of the first ones and one of the most well-known ones is memory hacking. So games store a lot of important values in their RAM. This includes their health, their ammo, their position, their speed, and a lot of other important qualities. And attackers can edit this value, these values on their machine to give them an unfair advantage. So these exploits include infinite ammo, invincibility, super speed, teleportation, just to name a few, but there's a lot of others. So for memory hacking, there's two different ways that are typically used. So known value scanning, where they use hacker uses known values variables to locate those in memory. So example, if you have 100 HP, find that place in memory, and then they change that value and see which memory values change as expected. And once this information is found, they can change the value of a lot of different things depending on what that information comes up in memory. The other thing is pointer scanning. So even if the values move around in memory, so it's a bit trickier to do like the known value scanning. So instead, you're going to try pointer scanning. So modern protections, you run into ASLR, address space layout randomization. You're going to find pointers that reliably track important stats. You're going to use those pointers to identify where memory that is useful for you will be stored in the RAM, and then you can try and change that information. Another popular thing that happens besides messing with the memory is aimbots. So aimbots are software that like automatically aims at enemies for you, and they can be very obvious or so subtle that you don't even know someone's using an aimbot. And they read the game memory to find player enemy positions, and then they calculate your angles, and they move the player's aim automatically, or like I said, subtly assist. So this is a big problem because even if you think someone's using an aimbot, it could be so subtle that you really don't know. So can we make an aimbot? Yes, you can. Please do not do anything illegal, but go for it if you want. Just don't blame me. So you can make your own aimbot. Woohoo! Next one. Okay. Fun video. You can look at that later. It kind of goes through it, but I will be mentioning a lot of the stuff in that video. So what happens? So AI aimbots are kind of what people turn to when they don't have access to memory that's easy to, change. So it's protected. It's hard to parse. There's, something in it. And since most first-person shooter games are centered around identifying enemies, and you have to take out your enemies and, get to the end, whatever end goal you have. Aimbots help you achieve this faster. They help you become a more successful player. And this is just, it's used in a lot of, Fortnite, Call of Duty, all sorts of games. And the new Aimbots AI is being used to help kind of do this in a faster, more efficient, and also more subtle way. So can AI be used to do this? Yes. YOLO, it can. And YOLO is the algorithm that can be used. It doesn't stand for you only, well, it does also stand for you only live once, but in this case, it stands for you only look once. And YOLO is an AI algorithm that parses everything in one kind of go instead of two. And it's a powerful real-time object detection algorithm. So it's also used in like Waymo and other like self-driving cars and things. And it's great at identifying objects in a scene. So if you're looking, for example, at a bad guy's head or the bad guy's body, and you're trying to figure out, okay, I need to identify quickly who's an enemy, where I need to shoot them, and if I shoot them in a specific place, how many points do I get? So these are obviously important information you need. So this is a link to a GitHub that makes an AI aimbot. Use at your own discretion. But this aimbot only works for systems with the NVIDIA GPU, which is a specialized chip designed for accelerating graphics and computing tasks. So this particular AI aimbot will only work if you have that chip, but if you don't, we'll go into some other different aimbots that are also used. So this aimbot, the one that's used with the NVIDIA chip, after you have your information, okay, you've used YOLO to figure out where your head and body is, you load your images, you draw bounding boxes around the enemy bodies and heads, you run it, you're training the YOLO model to recognize these bodies and heads, so that way every time you play the game, it'll immediately alter your gun and move it really quickly and subtly, so that way you can shoot your target and get full points. So download the pre-trained YOLO model, see if it works on your computer or don't. But you can also build your own. So other examples, if you don't have that chip or you're just wanting to try something new, include the Unity target detection system. So this system utilizes Unity's SphereCast to identify targets within a specified range, and it kind of ensures line of sight and it helps you avoid obstacles. It's really good for single player games or scenarios where like precise aiming is challenging. So low lighting, lots of objects coming at you. It does a really good job of kind of taking in everything and like reading in graphics, which is great. A little bit more about how that works. So it uses angle calculation, smooth rotation, and integration. So obviously, there's a little picture up there. So you gotta determine the signed angles kind of between your current orientation and the target's position. And then you have to calculate the angular velocity based on the distance of the target, the rotation time, and all these other factors that come into kind of like the graphics behind the game. I don't know if any of you guys have taken 174A, but in that class, they talk a bit about like the graphics that come into making the game. So the positions, the coordinations, and the camera. And that information is utilized in Unity's kind of aimbot. And they're all incorporated so that way you can take out your target quickly, efficiently, and in a kind of cheating manner. So those are a couple of the ways that you can create and like hack in the games. There are a couple of really cool links that I've included at the end that kind of talk about how they do this. There's some GitHubs, there's some videos. Obviously, like, don't do anything illegal, but like it's cool and it's fun to try. I had a lot of fun with it, so give it a shot. But how companies fight game hacking, that's also a really important thing.
Okay, so some of the main concepts of actually preventing cheating is an anti-cheat. What does an anti-cheat really do? Well, for one thing, it detects, which means it identifies cheats, normal behavior, or third-party tools, anything. So for example, if you're playing World of Warcraft, there's a whole entire thing where people would walk back and forth just to clear enemies or anything. So you would be able to identify that something is wrong here, because no one's spending 5 hours a day walking back and forth. So that's what detection is. Prevention is how to actually block cheats in software, run integrity checks, figuring out that the game is actually unmodded. So there's many different ways to get into to talk about how prevention works. I'll talk a little bit about it later, but basically it's just being able to actually prevent people from just putting mods in the game or even getting to the point where they're able to cheat. Then there's enforcement. How does enforcement work? It's a banning or suspending cheaters. That could be some of the people who made the game watching over you and banning you individually, or the anti-cheat itself doing it. It depends on how the game creators do it or how abhorrent it is, because sometimes a human touch is needed to figure out if it's actually cheating or someone who's actually just wasting their time. And then there's monitoring, which is actually more of a combination of the few, which is detection and prevention, where it's doing real-time analysis of gameplay to figure it out.
Okay. There's also a lot of anti-cheat software. So the examples include Fortnite's anti-cheat, BattleEye, and Vanguard from Riot. And these are used to scan memory for known cheat signatures. They monitor strange behavior. So obviously, if someone's walking 5 hours in a place, or someone has an insane amount of points in the game, and it's just, impossible for them to get there, these are things that they're going to be monitoring for superhuman reaction times. And then integrity checks on game files and processes. So obviously, a lot of the software can do this. But sometimes you don't know for sure. We've all been sometimes banned in a game and you're like, wait, what happened? I didn't do anything wrong. So obviously, sometimes a human is needed to make sure you don't lose your account or lose your status. But yes.
Yeah, so for example, we have the easy anti-cheat and the Riot Vanguard. These are two different levels of anti-cheat, although they are both kernel level. So for example, with Sea of Thieves, if you've ever played Sea of Thieves recently, there's a whole entire issue where cheaters are just able to run rampant and no one actually can deal with it, even though it's also a kernel level anti-cheat. What is kernel level? I'll get into that in just a second. But for example, with Sea of Thieves, you could just jump straight through your ship or just automatically just keep shooting other players. But with Valorant, there was Vanguard. If you originally were playing Valorant when it came out, there's an issue where Vanguard was turning off certain drivers on your computer, causing your computer to turn off its fans and your computer completely melting itself. So even though they're both kernel level, they don't act exactly the same, which is also why I have a whole entire joke about I've uninstalled Valorant more times than I've installed it, because I had a brother who installed it, learned of this error, and then decided I don't want my entire computer melting and got rid of it. The same thing goes for Sea of Thieves, is that it's so bad they're anti-cheat that an entire YouTuber made it his whole goal to make his channel about finding these cheaters and reporting them, to the point that he was banned himself. So there's two different levels. If you look at the following chart, it explains different types of anti-cheats, which is client-side, kernel level, which means it goes invasive into your computer and finds anything that could be of any issue. There's server-side, where the server deals with it. There's AI and ML based. I think some of these are self-explanatory as how deep it goes. You could read up on the chart yourself if you want to see examples of different types of anti-cheat. And sometimes it's combinations of them. Yeah. So here's an easier chart to read if you just want to know how well they actually work. So like how often they false ban people, or the tamper resistance, like getting past it, or the detection power of it overall, like how well it actually finds cheaters when it is accurate.
So just to go a bit in depth into one of these checks, so commonly used is server-side checks. So this is often when we're doing the memory changing and you're like, okay, I have 1,000 horsepower or 1,000,000 health. Obviously not true. And so the server takes in that information and the server decides what's true and not. So examples include Overwatch, where a lot of critical game logic is server decided and server dependent, and you kind of just have to accept it, and it makes memory kind of changing the memory difficult, and that's why you use aimbots. Woohoo! Also, so let's say you do get caught. You were using an aimbot, you changed the memory, you were doing something illegal. and now you're in trouble. So companies like Blizzard, Riot, and Epic Games have sued multiple times cheat developers. And Epic is suing cheat sellers for Fortnite currently. And you could face a lot of legal problems, money, jail time, lifetime bans, just the list goes on. So if you do get caught, you're kind of screwed.
Okay, so let's talk about a few famous hacking stories. So in 2024, Apex Legends had a North American leg competition, or ALGS tournament, between Luminosity and Dark Zero. However, something happened during this competition where it wasn't even the players themselves cheating. What happened is somehow a user named Destroyer 2009, which had no relevance to this tournament, had remote code execution vulnerability to get into the competition and started installing cheating software onto players' PCs. So instead of them being the one who was cheating, suddenly cheating windows would start appearing on their screen during the competition. Well, this is really bad. That's your entire career. So players would try closing their game immediately so they wouldn't get banned, which is suspicious in its own right if you just close your game in the middle, and all of that such. And so it happened for multiple rounds where suddenly cheating software just kept appearing on people's computers. And no one really knows how this person did it. The person refused to talk about it because they didn't even want other people to redo this same problem. So they deployed cheating tools into these people's into this competition while it happened live. So that is just one example of people getting into games and cheating. A second one is more of an indie game, which was Crab Game, if you've ever heard of that, where people were able to get into the IPs of other players. So what they ended up doing was DDoSing all the players. So you would have streamers who go onto the game and then suddenly it's all gone. They have your IP and your stream's done, or you're just a random player. Well, now your internet's down. Good luck. Yeah, and then there's the word.exe cheating incident, if you've ever heard of that one, where during a CSGO tournament called Extreme Land 2018 Asia Finals, which was happening in Shanghai, during Optic India's elimination match against Revolution, there was a player named Forsaken who was caught using a cheat called word.exe. He quickly decided to delete it once he was caught. So when they went back onto the computer and tried reinstalling it, it no longer worked, but it was pretty obvious that it was some sort of aim assist. So even though they had an anti-cheat available, it was still bypassed during a competition setting. Who thought it was a good idea to actually put it onto a competition PC, to a cheat platform? Like, they're going to catch you, especially if you go as fast enough to try deleting it when they come look at your computer. Just not a good idea all around. But a second similar situation would happen during the Indonesia split, a one open qualifier, where a cheat program called Netflix.exe would have been deactivated by Vanguard. Netflix.exe deactivated Vanguard and activated Namebot. Yeah, you trying to get rid of the anti-cheat system during a competition, not the best idea. But similar idea, word.exe and netflix.exe, not creatively named. Then there's very common ones that include vision and map packs. If you know anything about fog of war, or just completely destroying things in your screen, so completely putting a black box over something, there's a general idea in computer science where that's not really destructive. Something still has to have the data that's supposed to be behind there. So there's ways of finding out how to get in there. And another version of this is camera zoom, where you're just expanding the camera to see things that you aren't supposed to be able to see. So Dota 2 and StarCraft 2 both had issues similar to this, where people would just get rid of any of the visibility destroying tools so they can actually see things they are not supposed to be, which gives them an unfair competitive advantage.
Fun little slide there.
Yeah, cheating in a single player game, very interesting if you did Undertale that way.
So a couple other famous examples of game hacking include Fortnite's, where Epic Games banned thousands of players weekly and sued a lot of them for cheats. Call of Duty's Warzone, Raven Software implementation, and a lot of anti-cheat systems. The Counter-Strike Global Offensive, World of Warcraft, and I think this one's funny, the Pokemon Go, where hackers GPS signals to like cheat distance-based rewards, so they wouldn't have to like go, 2 miles to get a Pokemon. They just have to like stand up, and then it would be right there. Which I mean,
Yeah,
think
gamers
smarter,
don't
not
like to
harder.
walk.
They
Gamers-
don't.
Yeah.
They don't.
Exercise is not for no.
Think smarter, not harder. And this is a couple other links that I found really interesting when kind of like doing my research. So why do people game hack? Fun, profit, curiosity, trolling. Some people don't have a malicious intent. They just want to see if they can do something, and then they end up doing it and they get in a lot of trouble. Some they make hacks, they sell them and make a lot of money, and some just really hate the game or hate someone on the game and want to make their life miserable. The ethical question, is all hacking bad? Some hacks may be good. People have disabilities and they might not be able to play the game without a specific hack. So the specific hack, doesn't exactly give them an advantage, but makes it so that way they can even play the game to begin with. So interesting kind of question to take up. Obviously, the arms race between hackers and anti-cheat developers. And then another ethical question, obviously, should game companies ban players forever for hacking once? Should there be different, laws, regulations on that? How serious, the hacking is obviously should play a part, but kind of just some fun questions and links to check out if you're interested.
And people might also consider modding to be hacking because you're changing the direct game itself. So would you consider a Minecraft mod to be hacking? As long as you're not playing on a server, of course. Like just normally adding a mod to your game. No, that would not probably be considered hacking. But if you're going into like currently the Star Wars Battlefront lobbies and cheating just to troll streamers, that's probably actually considered hacking.
Okay, so this is the activity we're going to be working on. So the objective, so alter elements of this game using Cheat Engine. So there's a link to download Cheat Engine for Mac or Windows. There's the target game and the goals. So modifying infinite player health, modifying the player's speed, modifying the enemy health, the attack speed, and music changing. So those are some of the things that, and we will hopefully have these slides up so that way everyone can access this stuff. Here's some also resources that you guys can click on. There's like GitHubs and links and other things I found interesting. But any questions? Cool. Okay, yay. All right, get to hacking, I guess. Thank you so much.